Folks, I'm John Miller along with Marc Morehouse. This is HawkeyePodcast.com. We are recording this later in the evening on March 25th, as Marc and I felt like we probably needed to maybe have a post-mortem, if you will, on this 2020-2021 Iowa men's basketball season. We talked, of course, about some things following the loss, the painful loss to Oregon this past Monday in the NCAA tournament. We'll go through some things here. And that doesn't mean that it's a no basketball zone for the next 7 months. It just means this is going to comprise the meat of it. And as we open topics up this summer for discussion, I'm sure there'll be other things that will bounce off. But, Marc, we've both had an opportunity to sort of cleanse the palate from Monday. And I'll just go ahead and start with you as you've had time to ponder the end to the season, ponder the season. Well, let me just lead off with this question. Was the 2020-2021 Iowa basketball season a disappointment?
Not at all. In my opinion, you got the two byes in the Big Ten tournament. I think that's, can they maintain that? Big question for next year. But boy, oh boy, that was a nice thing to have. You made it to the round of 32 again. What was the other big thing they sort of crossed off?
They were in the top 10 all year except for like 1 week.
Player of the year, a consensus All-American.
2 seed ties the high.
2 seed. That was it. That was it. The seeding. 2 seed, a Big Ten threat. I think this team held its own in the Big Ten. Now that meant a lot more before the tournament started than it does now.
Right.
But still, boy, it felt good at the time. I mean, you felt like this was a team that could take some punches and throw some. So, I think that see, there's a thing, John, when Ferentz got his big salary, people automatically assume, well, that means wins.
Right. We're buying wins.
Yeah, and that's just not how it works. Best players, a couple of the, leading scorer, leading assist maker, leading 3-point player or shooter. That doesn't equate to automatic dubs. I mean, it doesn't equate to a Sweet 16 automatically. Right. I mean, you got to still go through the motions. You still got to earn it. Still got to achieve it. So, yeah, just not I don't think it disappointment. I mean, I guess it does kind of add to the disappointment. I did tweet after the game that's the unbelievable Sisyphean math of Iowa basketball. And I think once people figured out who Sisyphus was, they were like, yeah, maybe.
That's the guy that pushes the rock up the hill, right?
There you go. You got it.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
I don't mean that's a big smart thing. That's just something that lodged in my head when I was a kid. So
sure. No, you're fantastic at analogies. And I think, Marc, a question like, was that a disappointment? I'm not saying it's an unfair question, but it's a very personal question.
Right. And well, for you, I'll throw it back at you. Is that it ultimately was this season a disappointment for you, or are you happy that your Halloween basket had maybe one full-size Snickers in it?
Yeah, I think that's good too. I think that for me, I think it can be both. I think that it can be disappointing how it ended.
Yes.
But satisfying for the voluminosity, the volume. You said something 2 minutes ago that I think is almost maybe on the obituary of the season. It felt good at the time. That seems like it might sum up the entirety of this season. It felt good at the time.
Mm-hmm.
It provided me, and again, I believe at age 50 and having had a number of laps around this track of whatever it is that I've done and do, that I have no problem admitting the fan in me exists, but the analyst in me also exists, and I think I can look through two lenses at this advanced age. I, as the fan in me, looked forward every night they played. I looked forward to that. I would tell my wife in the morning, hey, Iowa's playing tonight, so I'm watching the game. And then I'm doing a podcast afterwards. Okay, sounds good. And there were times, Marc, during the Todd Licklider era that I wouldn't have watched that team play basketball unless I had the excuse that it was part of my quote unquote job. And even then, I didn't watch some of them. I faked my way. I couldn't watch it. It was horrible. And this season was must-see TV for me every game, all 27 of them. And I enjoyed the heck out of it. And I said that on Monday. I still feel that way. And I was on the radio this week with Chris Williams and Ross Peterson on 1460 KXNO Sports Fanatics Des Moines, 4 to 6 p.m. And we were talking about this, and I kind of felt like the old guy who's already on Golden Pond reflection mode.
Hey, welcome.
That's your side of the tracks.
I hope you brought some beer. No, I'm just kidding. Root beer.
Yeah, root beer, exactly. Is in that, man, I am at this place in life where I was talking to Ross, and I'm like, hey, Ross, because he was really disappointed. And I said, hey, Ross, did you watch the games this year with your kid? He's like, yeah, absolutely, I did. And I'm like, what do you remember about watching Iowa basketball games? Because I asked him when his first cognizant memories of Iowa basketball, and it was the BJ, Roy, and Ed era. Like, what do you remember about those teams? What do you remember about that time? It's like, I remember they were really good players, and I remember every night watching those games with my family. And I'm like, that's it. That's it. Did you watch this year's team with your son? He said, yes, I did. And we got over to a game, was it 2 years ago maybe, and he loves Luka Garza, and he thinks Luka Garza is amazing. I'm like, did you guys talk about Iowa basketball a lot during the season? And he's like, yeah, we did. I'm like, that's it. That's what it's about. That's the dash. We are born on a date. We pass on a date. And in between those two dates on our headstones is a dash. That dash represents our life. And life is what represents the beginning and end. This is what we live. We basically live seasons. We live regular seasons, if you want to compare that to sports. It's all going to end for us someday, just like it all began for us someday. But the fullness of life, what constitute our life, is what's done in between. So to me, that's a dramatic way to talk about this basketball season. I will admit to that. But to me, Mark, I'm just enjoying the heck out of the dash anymore at this stage.
I feel that. I also, feel like I've crash landed a little bit in life and have run a few laps and a little bit of tatters, and not tatters. I'm fine, but my clothes they're not ripped.
Oh,
so the landing made it. The landing made it. But I will say this: the pandemic. What you said about the pandemic last week. Sports have. I remember watching the Korean baseball, John, way back last April, going, okay, this might be it. Right. I'm gonna have to learn these guys' names, and it was fine. I watched it a couple nights. It didn't hit. It didn't fill the void, but it was something. And I thought, well, here we go. I mean, here's a whole year of this. So then we got sports back, and then you were able to. I think people wanted to see, especially the way last March hit for people. You kind of felt like you had something. You had your favorite car antenna kicked off by a vandal. Yeah. I mean, you didn't even know. You didn't even know, and all of a sudden you don't have the radio. But you got to hear this song this year. You got to hear it to the end, and the end. It didn't end where you wanted it to. But man, just think of the clouds that light shined through. I mean, people basically looking in the abyss. I mean, not too big of a stretch there in my mind. There was an existential dread that we had this year, and hearing Ross talk, that you guys had that conversation. That's beautiful. I mean, that's what it should be. That's how Iowa basketball was for me when I was a kid. My parents were nuts about it. And they had people over all the time. We would get the good food. Oh, Mom's making actual real food tonight.
Hey, Mom bought Funyuns.
Exactly. It's not ham patties and Mrs. Glab's meatloaf again. It's real food out there. So let's go out and eat and watch the Hawkeyes. And I really think that the program, maybe it's back. Maybe the Big Ten Network helped expand the footprint. So guys like my pal UES Hawk out in New York can watch him every night if he wants. but I think taking those non-conference winter games away, getting them off TV, and having anything on the internet breaks that connection. The connection where you are sharing it with family and kids. This year, I think getting it back, I think everybody appreciated a little more. Where maybe you would have left dad alone to watch the game before. No, come on in, sit down, let's watch the game together.
Right.
And that's a beautiful thing. I think there was a lot of that in this season. I think there's a lot of that in this hockey season for me. I know I'm geeking out here, and I know that I'm going way into left field, John, and looking for the butterflies. But dude, sit down if you can, sit down Saturday and watch FCS football on ESPN Plus. That's the pandemic. It wipes everything away. It's the announcers are goofy over the top, trying to top each other, because they know that they're basically employed by the schools. And the football is nuts. The football is fun to watch, crazy stuff you haven't seen. Sports, I think, a couple of things that have hit me in the face during the pandemic, John, our pets are hugely important.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know your dog tonight, but I'm sure your puppy's around. I think the pandemic's added a year onto our dog. He's 13.
Yeah.
Added a year to his life. Our pets are very important, and our sports are very important. I've always been, I'm a sports writer, was a sports writer for a long, long time. It always has meant something. It always kind of felt like work. Now I'm starting to kind of enjoy it again and go to it more. And so what a great crutch it's been, just mentally and just escapist wise during the pandemic.
Yeah, it really has. And you're right. The dogs are loving all this extra time that they're getting with everybody, no doubt. And listen, I can still remember 27-year-old John, 35-year-old John,
45
John, 45, that has maybe through remote controls. I remember in a stretch in the mid 1990s when I was about 23, 24, when Andre Woolrich in 3 consecutive games,
I covering that team. Yep.
Missed 3 game-winning shots, and Iowa lost 3 straight Big Ten games by 1 point. And I remember breaking 2 remote controls against my buddies that I was living with at the time, against his stone fireplace. And the third one, I got mad. He's like, "Don't throw it this time." So I ran and launched my left shoulder into the stone wall because I was so angry. So I remember, been there, done that. So just because my outlook maybe has changed, I'm not trying to belittle anybody else who's still a little bit burnt by this, who feels like they ordered a Big Mac with no mayonnaise, but mayonnaise came in it, which has happened to me multiple times. I hate mayo. So I can understand that. And I'm not telling you how to feel. I'm just suggesting, consider the journey. Consider that 3 of the best offensive efficiency basketball games of the last 30 years took place in this season. Consider the show that we just had. How many times did this team hit 12, 13, 17 3-pointers in one game? Consider the excellence that we just got to witness in Luka Garza, and consider the attention that was just shown on this basketball team because of the regular season that they had. Now, Iowa fans are always going to remember that they lost in the second round of the tournament. But sometimes where my Wisconsin envy comes from in football and basketball, it's how the Badgers have always seemed to advance the brand when they had the opportunity the last 15, 20 years. And Iowa has it. And I think that Iowa did advance the brand this year.
I would agree with that, but I would also say you're right. Advancing the brand in that tournament way.
Yeah.
That
sucks.
It comes back to that for a lot of people. And, maybe there's always going to be a certain percentage of people, John, who are throwing the remote.
Yeah, you're right.
And some of them some of them have that superpower where they can come down from it and say, okay, got to go get a new remote. Let's not do that again. My big story that way is I had a neighbor who, when I lived in Dubuque, before I went to the Gazette, huge Packer fan. They had not won a Super Bowl yet. That's when I was a psycho, John. That's when I was throwing stuff, cussing,
Right.
almost getting in fights at Packer games. I was a hooligan, John. I was a hooligan. So I lived in Dubuque, and there's kind of row houses, and the neighbor next door was a Vikings fan. And of course, Packers are on. I'm yelling about the Packers. He starts yelling, I thought that was a good play. And I could hear him totally. And I'm like, bleep you.
Mm-hmm.
So we're yelling back and forth, and we'd see each other, and we'd start laughing. Like, you're crazy. No, you're crazy. So there is that. There is that energy. I think this team, and I think kind of the fans a little bit too. I mean, I could do without the Twitter policing on how fans what they can or can't tweet. The Hawkeye Elvis gang, I'm with you guys. I understand you don't like to see that stuff, and boy, it shouldn't be there. And boy, you'd like to see college kids protected a lot more on social media that way. It's just not going to happen. In my opinion, I think the kids are tougher than you give them credit for. But yeah, when I first started my job, I really worked, and social media became a thing. Like, let me see, it would have been 12 years, 12, yeah, 09, 08, somewhere in there. Yeah, you want to protect the kids from it. Yes, of course. And every year I would tweet, and eventually I would get it shoved up my butt is, these guys aren't faceless commodities. Have some light, have some, some warm feelings for them when, things go bad.
Right.
Obviously, but that not everybody's going to have that, Governor. And I've kind of fought that fight for a couple of years, and I've given up on it.
Kevin Bacon at the end of Animal House. Yeah,
pretty much flat Kevin Bacon. I don't mind it now. I mean, people. What I try not to do is put amplify just obvious negativity.
Right.
Yeah, I think kind of you're doing their mission for them then when you do that.
Right.
So I scolding over. I'm not telling anybody what to do. I mean, you guys, everybody can do whatever they want. But for this Iowa basketball team this year, yes, I do think the brand was advanced. Not a lot, but I think premier player wise, I think maybe you can see a bounce in recruiting. Maybe a big man sees, hey, these guys gave Garza this. They're going to need a Garza type.
Right.
I want to go to the show. There's a huge opportunity there. So I do think the brand advanced, but not in a meaningful T-shirt, Sweet 16 way. You know what I mean?
And maybe that's probably where I feel the most disappointment. Where I can be disappointed but still be appreciative and remembering how much I enjoyed it, is that they had a chance to take the brand farther. This 5 days in between games and the literal platforms that these guys are put on in media outlets and things like that, that is worth millions and millions of dollars of marketing and branding. And this team was good enough to get it, but it didn't. And that kind of dovetails into, we're going to bring up some questions from some folks that sent them to us on Twitter when we gave a shout out. Let's start with Nick Clark, who says, what kind of impact does this season have on recruiting? Boost from being a top 10 team most of the season, getting a lot of national exposure, or no impact since the season ends in disappointment with Iowa not getting to the Sweet 16 with the National Player of the Year? I think there's a boost. I think that the players that Iowa is likely going to be a part of Iowa's class of 22, which will sign by and large in November, which is what, Mark, 6-7 months from now. These are people that Iowa had already established a relationship with, and who were watching Iowa all season long, and who can already mentally see how they would fit into this style and this system. And I think for the class of 23, some of that is applicable. But beyond that, class of 24, class of 25, your eighth graders, I'm telling you, Luka Garza's name was so prominent, and every talking head in the country almost for the last several months of the season was talking about Luka Garza for National Player of the Year. And that's going to get some basketball junkies tuning in. So I don't think it was the golden opportunity was seized. It wasn't, but I think an opportunity was seized with the consistency of play, with there are different types of advertising, Mark. You got your branding campaigns, like, we've got advertisers in Barntown Brewing, we've got Fong's Pizza, we've got Heartland flagpoles and flags. You can go to their websites. We'll talk about those later, but a lot of those are branding campaigns where you hear the brand consistently or see it consistently mentioned over and over. Then you have call to action campaigns. Call to action is, hey, we have a sale at Heartland Flagpoles and Flags. Click here because here's the sale. What Iowa just got out of the season, in my opinion, was that branding campaign. Like, well, if I'm going to go for a soft drink, what do I get? Well, I've seen the Coke advertisements 110 times. When I want a pizza, well, Miller and Morehouse talk about Fongs. I'm going to get Fongs. That's what I think Iowa got some of this year. So it wasn't a wasted opportunity, but I think that one shining moment, pun intended, was missed.
Agree, and I couldn't have said it any better. That it is the marketing part works. That's a good analogy. I'm trying to think what I could add to that. There's really not. I'd like to see. I don't know. I don't know. I think that I think we've kind of hashed this one out.
We kind of hit that one. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. I mean, this is. I don't think that there's. It didn't go backward. It didn't go very far forward. But there's, still the disconnect between having best ever types and not making the Sweet 16. I don't know how much that rings out, John. I don't know how much that rings out to prospective players. It also kind of plays into the unbelievable math that is Iowa basketball. This is a program that should have been to more than 4 Sweet 16s in the last 41 years. So
right. No,
that math is a weight on this program, and until that starts to erode even a little bit, even with making the Sweet 16 this year. I mean, it's not it's not the breakthrough, but it erodes that crazy math, the Sisyphean thing where no Sweet 16 even after 21 years. So that's a hell of an argument. We're not going to win that argument, John. I mean, if whoever out there comes at you with a knife and fork and that's the bone they want to pick, all you got to do is wait, olay them, because there's really not much fight there. I mean, they're basically right. You're right.
Which I think leads into another interesting question. Boyd VP and Ryan Mack 013 sort of asked a similar question. Is this the best we can expect from Iowa basketball? Dr. Tom gets fired because he couldn't consistently get to the Sweet 16, and now the Hawks can't make it there at all. And Ryan Mack says, in your opinion, what's the ceiling for the Iowa basketball program? Arguably the best team in decades, but still could not reach the Sweet 16. I'll give you first crack at this. Is this the best that Iowa fans should expect, or can expect? Let's go with can, because can and should are different. Is this the best they can expect?
The evidence on the table says yes, right? I mean, 21 years without a Sweet 16, 40 years with just 4 sweets. I mean, we're talking about Sweet 16s like they're gold doubloons. They're not. Then their math says a Big Ten team should go to the Sweet 16 more than 4 times in 40 years.
Right.
The math says that. So maybe, yeah, but let's deconstruct it though too. Okay, Bowlesby did he pull the plug on Tom Davis too early? Maybe, but let me tell you, I was covering the Steve Alford coach hunt, hiring, whatever you want to call it. It was 1,000% the right move. It was 1,000,000% welcomed by Hawkeye. Actually, I won't say that. There was a small group of people who thought they were doing the wrong thing by Tom Davis. Tom Davis was beloved. He was beloved. I mean, he was. He has ties back to the Amana Hawkeye Classic, I believe, and he was around.
He probably has Amana Hawkeye Classic ties.
If he has the bucket hat, I'll buy it off him. But so you go back to Tom Davis and Bowlesby. Okay, that was a break. Bowlesby's given up on a coach who's given him all this. Well, but he's got Alford coming, so all right, we're all good. And then Alford comes in, and he's the absolute worst type of human being you can possibly think of. and the program sinks to that. Actually, I'm giving Barta all kinds of credit for cold shouldering his ass out to the pit in New Mexico, where, probably as high as he should have climbed. And then you go to Todd Licklider, absolute freaking disaster, crater. Then you get Fran McCaffrey, out of region coach, and that took that added, I think, degree of difficulty
right
to the Todd Licklider crater. You have a coach who's figuring out where to live, how to live in a place with a young family of 5. That's a thing. So I think that all of those factors have just kind of piled on to like a train. You know what I mean? Just a train of not quite what Iowa basketball needs, and in some cases exactly what any basketball program should not want or have. It's all kind of piled up, and that's to me, it's not the sum total of what you can be in basketball. I think you can turn things around in basketball. It just hasn't happened. Everybody's had a finger in this pie. Bump Elliott had a finger in this pie. Everybody going back. I mean,
Hunter Rawlings,
maybe not Bump Elliott. Hunter Rawlings, yes. But man, you go back over the administrations, the coaches, the players, circumstances. I mean, I feel Iowa basketball fan when they ask, the question, when's my time?
Right.
When's our time? I get that. I don't think there's a program in the Big Ten that Nebraska, not Nebraska. Well,
Nebraska's never won a game in the NCAA tournament.
Nebraska and Northwestern, to me, are the 2 lowest rungs in Iowa in Big Ten basketball.
Yeah.
You're way ahead of them, but Iowa, those are traits that Nebraska's and Northwestern basketball programs also have. So you're kind of, you're not getting where you want to go. Can McCaffrey get there? I think he can. There's going to have to be some recruiting breakthroughs.
That's it. That's, to me, that's it right there. So the question is this the best that Iowa fans can expect? To me, yes, until. So what's the until? Yes, it's the best you can expect as long as you continue to put out one-dimensional guards. Yes, it's the best you can expect until you get multi-dimensional guards. Guards that can hit the 3 and that can beat a defender off the dribble and can finish at the rim. And folks, I'm not explaining an all-star or a first-team All-American. Many programs have those types of players. Many mid-major programs have those types of players. Heck, it seemingly every single Pac-12 program has those types of players. Many of the best programs in the Big Ten have those types of players. Players that are more than just one-dimensional. Well, John, that sounds like you're really criticizing what Iowa's had. Yes, I am.
I was going to ask you. You're kind of leading up to that. It was the post-oriented offense that they ran with Luka. Was that antiquated?
Yes, but I think they exacted about as much as you can get out of one-dimensional guards. And now CJ Frederick is more than a one-dimensional guard. Maybe if we're looking at 3-dimensional players here, I think he's a 1.5 to a 2. Maybe closer to a 2. He's not lightning quick off the dribble, but because of matchups, he can take people off the dribble. He also this year showed repeatedly when he was at 80% or better health that he can hit that floater in the lane. He actually has at a high percentage, really high percentage. So he can finish. He's smart enough also to not try to go to the rim like a Mike Gasell always tried to go to the rim and just could, he's just a mouse in the house, wasn't going to finish. I think CJ Frederick is that guy. Connor McCaffrey is not that guy. He is barely a one dimension. His one dimension is he's a good post feeder. The all-time best post player in Iowa history is not going to be there next year, Mark.
Right.
So, and Jordan Bohannon is a 1.5. He's also a good assist man, but he is a phenomenal shooter. And there is a role for a Jordan Bohannon on any Big Ten basketball team, any of them. Anybody would take Jordan Bohannon, but he probably doesn't start at Michigan. He doesn't start at Illinois. He doesn't start at Ohio State. And that doesn't mean that he can't be successful at Iowa, because he was. But at some point in time, rent comes due. And we're talking about the Sweet 16 here. And the round of 32 is when the rent is due. Make the t-shirt. That's when the rent is due, is in the round of 32, because that's when your multidimensional guards get you to the Sweet 16. Jordan Bohannon's a phenomenal shooter, but he can do little else relative to shooting. He can't finish at the rim. He's not going to blow people off the dribble, and he's also a below average defender. Connor McCaffrey can't shoot. CJ Frederick wasn't healthy. Joe Wieskamp is closer to that three-dimensional player. I was going to have to get more of those guys. Otherwise, this is the ceiling.
So we right now on our list, we have a recruiting breakthrough. You need the three-dimensional guy, and I love that. I love how you put that. Number two, what you're describing in my mind is a tough-ass grit guy.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody who hits the floor. Somebody who Brad Davison's somebody's ass. maybe not the ball grabbing, but
he's a good defender. He's a good shooter. He's got more dimensions.
Toughness.
Yeah.
And you've heard it, and we've all heard it from TV. Dockich before he disappeared into the wilderness. You've heard the toughness thing go at Iowa, and that Fran McCaffrey style play. It's a legit question.
I think that Davison brings more than one dimension. He's a great shooter. He's got that grit. Bohannon and Connor are tough.
Do you count the head game that comes along with Brad Davison? Is he going to undercut me? Is he going to hit me in the jibs?
Yeah, exactly. Maybe a little bit. But he also can defend.
I think there is something to that. I do think there is something to that.
Yeah. He brings his own juice. And Bohannon and McCaffrey are tough. And Bohannon can drip swagger. It's just that he can't really create his own shot unless he's beyond 25 feet. Because people are going to start guarding him. And usually those 25-footers are off the mark, and that's not really the kind of flow that you want to have, and certainly not in the second-round game of the NCAA tournament. So there is a player that I hope I'm describing that's already on the roster, okay? We talked about CJ. I think a healthy CJ is an asset. He's part of the recipe to that Sweet 16. The next one's Tony Perkins, who's 6'4", 210 pounds. He has a 38-inch vertical leap. He is a above average defender, even in the limited minutes that we've seen him play. Where he is lacking is seasoning, and he'll get that, but is outside shooting consistency. And honestly, Mark, as long as you don't have a Jamal Wilkes over the top of your head style hitch, and half the people listening to this like, who are you talking about? Go Google Jamal Wilkes for the Lakers back in the 80s. Ugly ass shot.
I remember Silky.
Ugly shot. You can learn and you can work into being a better shooter. Right? You can. Connor McCaffrey has that side, that 45-degree angle to the basket stuff. I don't know how that hasn't been worked out of his system, but he's an old dog now in college basketball years, so I don't expect things to happen. Can't believe that he's just not a straight-on shooter. He's a cockeyed shooter. He's never going to be a good shooter. But I am hopeful that Perkins can, because that is a guy that can beat players off the dribble, get to the rim, finish at the rim, and also defend. So we've got CJ and we've got Tony. And I also think that you bring in a Joe Toussaint, and Joe Toussaint's minutes have to go up. Even if you got to live through some of that, the knobs turn to 11 too many times. I think you've got to do that. Ty Ulis is also a bigger guard. So I think there are some pieces that are on campus, but Fran's white whale has been guard recruiting, and it's not for lack of trying. He just hasn't closed the deal. And until he closes the deal more consistently, 32 is your ceiling.
Agree. Do you want to talk about want to do the depth chart for next year?
Yeah. For sure.
Or do we want to say that for later? Do you have some more questions?
No. Well, let's go into that because I think it dovetails, and we'll get a couple more questions.
I agree. You mentioned all the names that I had written down for basically my number ones and twos. I have number one, the point guard next year, Joe Toussaint. I mean, I think he showed me. Okay, there's a question of whether or not he deserves it. Yeah, he deserves it. I mean, he's the natural heir to that position, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Also, he improved his game. I mean, why should they give it to him? Well, John, I think one of our first podcasts, you broke down that there was an offensive number you went to. Well, do you remember what it was?
Yeah, it was an advanced metric relative to offensive efficiency.
Yes, and he was one of the worst on the team.
The worst
on the team. So I think if you could track that number from when we brought it up to now, I'm guessing there's some improvement. And what does kind of suck, and what I think, and this is going to be a little bit of a media rant. I think colleges are high right now on the convenience of the Zooms, and the Zooms you don't get enough. You don't get some of the sweet stuff you would have gotten face to face. Different writers at different times.
Right.
I had to have eyes in the back of my head. What the hell's Scott doing now? Who's he talking to? And I kind of gave up on that after a while because I wanted to have the conversations I was having. So we don't know if McCaffrey had a sit down with Toussaint or a staffer or anybody, but his game definitely changed. Right. He definitely geared down. He definitely stopped dribbling himself into the court and just grew up. And just the game slowed. I hate that term. Game slowed down for him because people say that and they think it's a smart thing to say. It's a pretty general thing to say. But I'll say this: I think it did. I think it did slow down for Joe. It did, and I think that to me, he's the one.
Yeah, the stat was offensive box score plus minus. Okay. And the definition is a box score estimate of the offensive points per 100 possessions a player contributed above league average player translated to an average team. It's kind of like the equivalent of WAR in baseball-ish, but for offense. And Toussaint was, of all the players that played, non-scrub minutes, Toussaint still was the worst. Now, I am not a big fan of plus minus. I'm not.
That's sort of mainstream now, right? Plus minus.
It's lazy mainstream, in my opinion.
Okay.
Because let's say, Mark, that Austin Ash is out playing a 5-minute stretch where Luka Garza scores 13 points in 5 minutes, and Iowa outscored the opponent by 8, and then Ash goes to the bench for the rest of the game. His plus minus is off the charts.
This sounds like me in hockey. This sounds like me in hockey with a good player on the ice. Hey, I'm going to go on the ice with this guy. Get a good plus minus.
Hey, can we get the assist for the pass before the pass before the pass? That's what plus minus is to me.
The tertiary assist.
Yes. So, but at any rate, we all know that Joe was out of control a lot during this season, but he finished really well, and maybe he matures and plays within himself.
Who else at the one? Well, I also have Aaron Ulis.
Aaron Ulis, yeah. I mean,
6'3", 190.
Yes.
119 minutes this year compared to 350 for Toussaint. So that to me says Toussaint's ahead. Toussaint's in that chair. Maybe Ulis can win it. It's a long way to go. And then I also have Perkins in that mix, but I that's just me. He's a G by his name. That's it.
Right.
I don't feel like he's a point. I think it's Toussaint and maybe Ulis.
I think that maybe a better way for me to describe this, as my dog continues to run outside like an insane person or an insane hound, is if Connor McCaffrey averages the same amount of minutes next year as he did this year, they will not make the NCAA tournament.
That's mark that
tape. Mark that tape right there.
Walk me through this. Walk me through this now. I kind of agree, but I need to hear your reason.
Because Jack Nungy is not Luka Garza. Luka Garza is the throwback freak that you'd mentioned earlier. He's a bit of a throwback. He's an ancient throwback, and I loved every damn second of it from someone who has said and still believes that college basketball peaked as a sport in the 1980s. And that, now get off my porch. I'm trying not to be that guy, but to me, college basketball peaked in the 80s. from a fundamental aspect, sure, if some of these statistics were around back then, it would look different. But the footwork, the pivot foot, just Luka Garza was a masterpiece, and he's not going to be there. Jack Nunge's efficiency at finishing around the rim is going to be nowhere near where Garza's was, because Jack's nowhere near as strong as Luka is, and Jack's not going to be.
He's a different player. He's a different
player entirely. So unless Iowa gets someone in the transfer portal who can go down there, sit on the box, and not much farther away than the box, and Connor can feed that guy like a Miles Johnson from Rutgers who just put his name in the transfer portal, or that kid from Minnesota that transferred from Drake, whose name's escaping me right now.
Liam Robbins, I think he said he's staying there, but I'm not.
Okay.
I'm not 100%. I think I read that on Twitter.
Right. So, but a player like that, if Iowa can find a player like that, then I will amend my statement. But if Iowa doesn't bring in a true five who sits around the box and who's going to shoot most of his shots 6 feet in, then I think Connor McCaffrey does not. He brings more negatives than positives because of his shooting deficiencies that I talked about earlier. And he can't. How many times did he, when he was able to drive past someone this year, did he sort of stop, pull back, and shoot fadeaways? He doesn't have offensive instincts anymore. And that may not be his fault, because he's been playing with the ultimate crutch of all crutches. So if they don't get somebody else in the five, then they're not going. So I agree with you. Toussaint or Ulis has to play. They have to play in conjunction.
Right.
45, 50 combined minutes at the one. Otherwise, this team's in trouble. So I just mentioned, you go ahead.
No, talking about opportunity. Great opportunity for those guys.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't see anybody else walking into the one right now.
No.
I mean, I think those two are it. Maybe Perkins, but I think those two.
Yeah, I think so. And then, Jack Nunge, I just mentioned him.
Let's go to the two.
Okay, the two. CJ Frederick.
Well, I'm at Joe Wieskamp. But
okay.
Let's talk about.
You did well. You're right. Joe Wieskamp has eligibility, so let's talk about the Wheezy
let's start there. General consensus in my mind is that he's gone. Somebody who bit into that Susie Q. I'm trying to think of a hostess, something really good that we all love. Yeah, he bit into that Twinkie when he's a freshman. You get that taste, and you kind of now. What does he make the NBA? Is he Jared Uthoff? I don't know. Maybe, probably. He probably is not a first round draft pick.
No,
maybe he blows people away at camp or in camps and combines and all that kind of crap. I don't know, but it just feels to me like he's gonna be a professional basketball player.
Agreed. One caveat: he said after the game that he tweaked his Achilles.
Oh, okay? That's right. That is right.
So I don't know. I'm not a doctor. Clearly, we weren't doctors after the game when we didn't realize that hips also had labrums, apparently. I still am befuddled by that.
I knew they did. I
led you to a different water, and you didn't want to chase me.
I hear labrum, and I always think shoulder.
Agreed.
I always think shoulder. Because I covered football forever, and every other spring, hey, where's this linebacker? Oh, he's taking this. No, he's having shoulder surgery. Kirk.
Right. He's having shoulder surgery. So the Achilles, to me, when I hear a tweaked Achilles, I
don't know what a tweaked Achilles. Okay, I don't know if you guys out there know Jeff Johnson. He played a lot of softball. He's was one of my sports writer buddies. Jeff's a big dude, and he hurt his Achilles like 15 years ago, and I think it still hurts him.
Probably heard the shot from a football field away from some people that have. I had some buddies in my 30s that were going down with Achilles. I haven't played a game of pickup basketball since, just to be safe, because I don't want that. So if Joe Wieskamp is 100% healthy by May and the time that these pre-draft camps come around, because apparently he did not put his name in to test the waters last year.
Right.
because of the COVID. So you can do that twice. So he could still do that again and come back without signing an agent. So
I love that for basketball, by the way.
Yeah,
I
I
love that
agree.
rule.
I
Good,
agree.
good deal. Good for basketball.
Totally agree. So if he's 100% healthy at the pre-draft games, then I think he's going to go pro.
Do you think he can beat Kyle Korver?
Yes.
Kyle Korver, 6'7", great 3-point shooter.
Obviously, Korver had a historic career relative to his percentage, but yes, I do. I do think that he can.
You should read. I don't know, a bunch of years ago, I read something about Kyle Korver's workout regime. Basically, running underwater with rocks. I mean, the guy's a freak. So here's what Joe's sniffing. If you think he can beat Kyle Korver, career earnings $63 million.
Yeah, and
I would want to try to beat that.
Absolutely. So I think Joe's going to get picked middle to late second round. And like we talked about the other day, that means you're probably going to go to a team that made the playoffs and maybe a piece or two away.
Right.
I think that I don't. The odds of Joe making I don't know if you can get odds on your sports betting apps on Joe Wieskamp making an NBA roster next year or not.
We can make John. We can make a bet here.
Okay, I'll bet you $10 that he does.
Makes an NBA roster.
But in 2021, he will be on a roster.
I will pick one listener, and we will bet some Barntown beer.
There you go. Let's do that. That sounds good.
But if Joe does come back, John,
I'll gladly donate the 10 to Marc's beer fund and
centerpiece. He's a centerpiece. He is the guy.
Absolutely.
He comes back.
If Wieskamp comes back, this team will make it. I think this team is probably no worse than a 6 or a 7 seed. If he doesn't, they've got some problems. So
he's say, okay, Joe goes. The 2 is drum roll.
CJ Frederick.
There you go. You got it. That's who I had.
Right. And if Joe stays, Joe's the 3.
Right. Frederick, the Kentucky thing. I think the Kentucky guy was kind of pulling things out of his behind.
Just talking about names of people that could transfer in the transfer portal. That's what you're talking about there.
Old beat writer guy hears that and his butt cheeks clench because it's like, oh, that is just plausible enough to be a pain in my ass.
Right.
So,
right.
I think one of the last broadcasts, they talked about how his dad was at Notre Dame and Fran was there.
Oh yeah. Their family connections are incredibly tight.
So that kind of makes that Kentucky guy pulling something out of his ass.
The only credence I would give to something like this is, what did we all just live through? The craziest year of all time. Right. And what did these players live through that most people don't really either appreciate or even know? They just lived through, you got to campus in October and maybe you didn't get a chance to go home and see your family until this week. And let me tell you, as somebody who, I went away to college in my second year of college, my first year at the JUCO, my second year, I went 4.5 hours away from home. I cried during the first week away. Maybe that's a me problem, but I got homesick. And I can't imagine being away at college during something like the pandemic when you're forced to be in the lockdown of lockdowns. We've all been living in bubbles. These players have been living in a bubble inside of a bubble and not allowed to go do even COVID normal things. They haven't been able to do that. Their parents haven't been able to come and stay in their dorms, or, hey, we're going to come into town after the game's over. Let's go out to Wig and Pen and grab a pizza. Nope. None of that. So they've been isolated. So to me, the reason why I think if that would happen, it would be because it was really hard this year, and Kentucky's closer to home than Iowa City is. But I don't think it's going to happen.
Well, we poo-pooed it, and then you came up with a great reason why he would go.
The older I get, the more Occam's razor I get.
Oh, I get it, man. I get it. Trust me, I get it. I have Spencer Petras transferring to the Bears. So I don't know how that works.
That would be an upgrade for the Bears.
QB1.
Oh my gosh.
So we have Joe Toussaint and Ulyss at the 1. And we have Joe Wieskamp probably going professional basketball. Right.
So
and CJ Frederick and Perkins at the 2. Yes? No.
Yeah. I mean, CJ and Perkins 2-3.
Here's my mystery. Not my mystery, but here's just what I want to know. Keegan Render. I'm sorry, guys. Keegan Murray.
It's almost
I want to know that he can't do the 2. I just want to know that he can't do it. Everything that he was handed this year, he sent back nice and shiny. Whatever role, he just like, yeah, okay, I can do this. I got it. Just going off of that flimsy logic, I want to know if he can do it. I just want to know if he can do it. Hell yes.
Yeah. So what
I want to see that.
So here's another thing to think about with Iowa and their offensive system that they run. They run a lot of weave. They run a lot of ball screen high top weave games. Okay,
right.
So Bohannon did a lot of the ball handling this year because actually Connor played 4 a lot of the time. He would start out in the 4 spot on the floor, but Connor was always out high as well. So was Patrick, and so was Keegan. So just because the old school 1980s and 90s that you and I were raised on, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, is a little bit different now, especially as more and more larger players develop more and more guard skills. I think Keegan can play a 3-ish, and I think Patrick can play a 3-ish, and I think Keegan and Patrick can play a 4-ish. They're probably 3.5-ish. I don't think either is a prototypical 2 because neither of them has proven yet that they can shoot that way. But with Iowa's system, they're going to have opportunities on wings, on ball reversals to get the same kind of shots the old school 2s had. So I think that's what you're going to see, Mark. I think you're going to see, if Weiss camps out, I think you're going to see Perkins in the game. I think you're going to see Keegan and Patrick in the game a lot at the same time. And they are different players. The Japanese term is motokai, meaning the same but different. They are similar but different. And I think
like that.
Both of them have really intriguing upsides that I think is the secret sauce to maybe me looking at this next season totally wrong, especially as Feltz from Twitter asked us, what positions, Mark, do we think that Iowa needs to go out and fill potentially in the transfer portal?
Yes.
Obviously, we've talked about center. We've talked about a true 5.
I'm at 5 and 4 and 5. That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah. And to me, I think 5 for sure and a 2, a multidimensional shooting guard.
My sound's in, but my picture's not working.
Your face is frozen. That's okay.
Yeah, my sound is working though, so I just wanted to double check that. So we've got Perkins and CJ Fedrick at 2s. We got Ulis and Toussaint at 1. The first name I'm throwing out for 3 is Connor McCaffrey. He's going to go somewhere. I think 3-ish. I think what you said, roles and such. I think he's I almost said edge. I mean arc type player, wing type player. I think the value we talked about. Well, do they need a post feeder now? I don't know, but they definitely need a defender, and I think that Connor does give him some flexibility there at being a 6'3" and a big strong guy. He's guarded 4s,
right? He has.
I don't know if that's enough value from that position, but I'm putting the name there. Obviously, Keegan Murray's in that. Patrick McCaffrey's in that. Maybe Chris Murray's in that.
Yeah.
And then Peyton Sanford probably might be able to trickle in there. If he can take off like Joe did right away, well, then that's a good problem.
Yeah, Peyton's going to play. Does Peyton get Keegan minutes or Patrick minutes? That's yet to be determined. Meaning Keegan and Patrick minutes from this season.
They have a lot of guys who could be 3s.
Yeah, a lot of interchangeability that find themselves in the 3 or the 4 of the weave. No doubt about it. They're very thin at the 5. I mean, Nunji's going to be your 5. A Gundelay is going to be your 5, but a Gundelay is not going to be ready, I don't think, next year. I just don't. Could be surprised. Chris Murray actually, coming into this season or in practices, had more of a reputation as a better outside game. Keegan's outside game sort of tailed off towards the end. He wound up shooting less than 30% from 3, but he's got a really good looking stroke. I think that Chris is going to give you some really good minutes there too. So I think in the 3-4s, they're very long in both, obviously length and long from a positional standpoint, buying position. They've got bodies there. Got to get a 5, got to get a combo guard.
It'd be really nice for them to um, if Keegan and Chris paired off that neatly. You know what I mean? One was a 3 and one was a 4. It'd be
Yeah.
really nice if it worked out that way. They need help at 4. Right now, I just have Jack Nunji there.
Right.
I don't know, who do you have there?
No, that's. I mean, I have Nunji playing the center, the box role, down the paint role. I think that Keegan and Patrick can do that too. So that's the thing, Mark. I think that what does Brian Ferentz say that he likes to do? Whether or not that's something that he does consistently remains to be seen. But
Right.
he came in saying that he wanted to exploit matchups where Iowa had advantages, just like they did at the Patriots. That's what I think with Iowa basketball next year is if you got Patrick and Keegan and Jack out there at the same time and you got Tony out there, there's going to be a mouse in the house somewhere. Patrick or Keegan is going to have a 6'4", 6'3", 6'5" guy guarding them. And that's when you need Nunji to come out to the free throw line and run high-low. And just playing off matchups and forcing the other team to make a change. Okay, we got to bring a big guy in. Okay, that's fine. Then Keegan takes him out to deep waters and then drives right around him. And that's how you do that. I would like to see Iowa yin and yang a little bit more, or yin and yang a little bit more than what I think that they've had to do lately, because they haven't had to because of Luka.
I used that term in this post, actually, yin and yang.
Did you?
The only 5 I have is a Gundele, and I'm going to say this, John. You kind of said you don't think he'll be much next year, and I think that's probably right. If he can get 10 minutes next year, 10 good minutes, I think that's a huge plus. I'm not going to put any shots on his numbers. I just don't think that that's fair right now.
Yeah.
But I will say this. I'm not going to automatically think he needs to change his body. I mean, we haven't seen enough of him this year to see if his 6'10", 285 works for him. Now, you assume that his body will change because he wasn't able to work out. Iowa basketball does have a good strength and conditioning program. Right. We've talked about that on the podcast.
Maxwell, right?
Bill Maxwell, yeah. So I'm not going to maybe this is his body and maybe this is the body that works for him. After seeing the Loyola kid who looks like an off-duty cop, Farva or whatever, I am hopeful for a Gundele, and I see that, obviously the program has developed bigs now, and maybe there's a program that obviously there's a program that fits in for him. So I'm going to say if he can give him 10 good minutes next year, huge plus.
Yeah, agreed. A couple more. I think. Are there any other roster things? I think we've kind of hit on everybody.
Recruits. We talked about Peyton Sandefur. Yeah, we talked about everybody except for transfer stuff. Do you want to pin the tail on the donkey?
I mean, at one point in time we thought about Joe maybe looking like the kind of posture of a guy who might be considering. I don't know that I see that anymore. Joe Toussaint, rather.
I think his end of the year meeting is, Joe, you're the one. Okay. Right, and that was it.
And I think that there's, you have your end of season meetings in the coach's office, and he comes in and says, Joe, remember all season long what we talked about? Look what happened when you did it. Look what happened when you applied it. And look what happened in your play. I think you can, and listen, I don't need to be, Fran McCaffrey is the epitome of pep talk and pumping up his players. So I think he'll accomplish that. I don't know that they're going to lose anybody to discontentedness at all. I don't. So
I'm sorry I missed you there.
I think we must be having some technical problems with Mark. There you go. There you're back.
I'm back.
I hear you there. Yep. Let's
sorry.
No, you're good. Listen, it won't be the last time this happens.
I think my wife called me on the phone, and I think it screwed up my internet. But I'm back.
Yeah, that sounds like. See, that's what happens when you have a 3200 baud AOL connection, right?
Probably. I don't even know. Don't even ask.
Now, let's finish up here with a couple more questions and we'll get out of here.
Yeah. Lay it on me.
42-3 from Twitter says, free flowing up and down the court basketball is so much fun to watch and works better come tournament time. What will it take for the Big Ten to get rid of the 1990s Heat Knicks style of basketball so teams aren't beat to hell by March?
We've kind of hit on this last podcast, John. In my opinion, Big Ten doesn't care. They have the games, and the games are the games.
Right.
What the games look like, not the Big Ten's job. How the league does in the tournament, the Big Ten will act like that they care, but the money's already spent and everybody's getting paid. So, what would it take? Well, what would it take? Complete destruction of what Big Ten basketball is now. And I think Iowa fans got to compare and contrast. You saw what happened against Illinois in the Big Ten tournament.
Mm-hmm.
It was rough ball, and the referees called rough ball, and Illinois said, awesome, rough ball. And I was like, oh, maybe not so rough, but that's the Big Ten. Right. And then you go into the tournament, and the Pac-12 sitting there running around with a bunch of 6'7" guys doing whatever they want, one team out or whatever it is. So I think Iowa fans got to see that. What it would take was the Big Ten to get rid of it, get rid of its officiating, really
clean house,
super scrutinize things. Obviously, in my mind, I'm on record saying college sports need professional officials. There's just too much at stake now. So do that.
Yeah.
I just think there's too much to do. And after the Big Ten, let Greg Gard have his thing, I think Kevin Warren is going to be a very, very weak commissioner in that regard.
I think you're right. And Blake Beeson said, and this is kind of the last two are a little more lighter one, things that way, is Blake Beeson asked Caitlin Clark or Chris Kingsbury in his prime 3-point shooting contest from NBA line, who are you taking? And I just want to say that I decided to take this one a little more seriously than most. And I'm going to share the screen of some this little research that I did earlier today. I'm going to pull this up here. And those of you that are listening to this in the form of the podcast, I will say it out loud. So CK14 versus Caitlin Clark. Kingsbury for his career attempted 645 threes. So he was a high volume shooter in his 3 years. Jordan Bohannon took 909. And Kingsbury's best year was his sophomore year. He was 117 for 297. And 297 is still the all-time record threes attempted in the season by an Iowa player. And he made 39.4%. All right, that's a lot. So 117 of those. Caitlin Clark has taken 262 threes this year. Remember, I just said Kingsbury took 297 in 33 games. Caitlin Clark's taken 233 in 28 games. So she's got 5 more games to go. I mean, she's in Kingsbury attempts range right now. And she's also made 40.5% of her threes to Kingsbury's 39.4%. She's making 3.8 a game, where Kingsbury in that sophomore year made 3.5 a game. So she's a higher volume shooter than Chris Kingsbury was at his highest volume, which is the men's record for field goal attempts in the season. She also makes a higher percentage. And I actually think she's a better 3-point shooter off the dribble than was Chris Kingsbury. We're talking 23 feet. I'm not betting against Caitlin Clark.
Damn, you did the work and the math. I like it. I'll throw this in. I haven't seen Caitlin Clark smoke cigarettes and play pool at an Iowa City bar. So I'm going to go, Chris Kingsbury's got the, the Waylon Jennings factor going.
Yes, you're right.
He was also, I did cover him. So he was also a guy who seemingly showed up every other day with one of his ears pierced and kind of infected. So,
colorful.
Chris was different.
Before different was allowed.
He was different, and he was borderline Brad Davison, but you know what? He was Iowa's Brad Davison.
Oh, man, there you go. Look at that poll.
So
we love love
loved
him.
him. You loved him.
Mark, you just
I loved
crushed
him.
it.
I loved talking to him. He
Yeah.
was funny. He would just sit there and relax and talks in a relaxed way. Didn't worry. He was not a guy worried about the platform. He was not a guy who was worried about whatever the NCAA was doing.
Mm-hmm.
He wanted to get to the bar and he wanted to have a beer and smoke some cigarettes.
You know what Chris Kingsbury would be in today's world? Just another great 3-point shooter.
Probably.
But Chris Kingsbury did these things. Again, 297 attempts is still the men's record for most 3-pointers attempted in a season. So I'm not saying it wasn't a lot. It was a lot. Kingsbury was a long ball, the first real long ball hitter in Iowa basketball. The 3-point line came into existence in '86, just 8 years prior to Kingsbury's sophomore year. Yeah, Jeff Moe could hit the three. There were other guys that could hit the three, but Moe probably had 120 attempts. B.J. Armstrong never had anywhere close to 200 attempts in a season. Kingsbury had nearly 300. Chicks dig the long ball, as the baseball ads used to say. Kingsbury was Iowa's first Mark McGuire, or Dan McGuire, rather, not Mark McGuire. Mark McGuire. Dan McGuire was the brother that played football at Iowa, right?
You were correct.
I was right the first dang time.
You were right the first time with Mark McGuire.
Anyhow,
McGuire. Dan, I before CJ Beathard completed a pass, and I would fight with Hawkeye fans on this every once in a while. Dan McGuire was technically the last Hawkeye quarterback to throw a ball in the NFL. I think that was 93. But I didn't really count him. I went with Vlasic because he actually played for Iowa.
Right.
And I think Vlasic was the last one. CJ Beathard made that a trivia question. He updated that. And also, hey, congratulations, CJ, on the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Yeah, gets that second free agent contract with Jacksonville. And we will be talking a lot about those things here coming up. Last thing, if Luka Garza were a beer, what beer would he be?
Budweiser. He's something heavy. He's something heavy. Budweiser, Bud Heavy, man.
I bet Barntown has a heavy brew, right?
I want to get a hold of. They just put out an Australian IPA with a couple of hops that I really enjoy. I can't remember what they are right now off the top of my head. Nelson hop. It's an Australian hop. Really good. It's real dank. I hope people enjoy that. That's one, Pete, that I need to get my hands on.
So we do.
I am begging for beer on this podcast.
Yeah, you'll get it. We do want to thank Pete and Barntown Brewing for sponsoring the podcast, Hawkeye Podcast. Go to their website, barntownbrewing.com. Also would like to thank Fong's Pizza, FONGS pizza.com. As well as heartlandflags.com. That's Heartland flagpoles and flags for all your flag waving needs. Right now I've got my Kansas City Royals flag flying out in front of my house. If Iowa had made it to the Sweet 16, I probably would have put the Tiger Hawk out, but I'll save that one for football season. Or maybe sometime this summer, just to let the neighbors know there's another Iowa guy in the hood, because I've seen a few Tiger Hawks driving around.
There's going to be spring football.
That's true. Good point. There will be spring football.
There's going to be spring football. I think our next podcast will be football centric.
Football centric. That'll be
and I don't know what exactly. I mean, who was I talking to today? I can't remember. Somebody on Twitter. I think Iowa has already said that there's not going to be a lot of football or any football viewing. I hope that changes a little bit now with the fact that the stadium is up to 50%. I believe they've announced that. That's a great thing. That gives you some hope. I think once Iowa is clicking right now as far as vaccinations go. People are getting them. It's rolling out every day. My daughter got one today, I think in Iowa City. So, and she's 23, and so I think she said she was a smoker. She is not. But anyway, get your vaccination and I think by fall, it'll be more than 50%.
I would agree with you. I think you're exactly right. And that's exciting. That is exciting. We are seeing a little bit of light there at the tunnel. My wife and daughter got jabbed today, so that's good. And
my wife too.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Anything else you want to add, Mark?
No, man. I'm sorry about the video. Hopefully that gets better. And
it's a great freeze frame for those who are watching the video, and the lighting in your room is exquisite. You're making I got to do something about my background now. You look like you're in like Dan Patrick's studio.
That the red sweatshirt is my brother was an assistant wrestling coach at Senior before he died, and I wear that one around. I don't know what else is back there. A couple guitars. I'm trying to sell you the one.
A bar stool. It's great.
Bar stool. That's where I sit when I play guitar occasionally. But yeah, I think we need to do a football podcast, and we probably should talk about making it to a tailgate.
Ooh. Hawkeye podcast going out, and yes, that would be so much fun.
I think that'd be fun.
That would be a blast. That would be a blast. We'll make it to a tailgate. Heck, as far as I'm concerned, Mark, I just as soon find somebody's RV and sit out in the parking lot and watch the game from outside, and hang out with folks as opposed to even going in. So
there are so many cool RV type places. It's almost unbelievable. You guys will see a picture of me. It'll come up eventually. I just jumped into the Swinger. It's called the Swinger, super old school RV parked by the transportation center.
Yeah, the transportation hub. Yeah.
Oh, it's beautiful old thing. Go in there. The people are really cool. Ask them to go in.
Yeah, ask before you go. Say Morehouse sent you.
They'll hate that. But go. I can't wait for the community to be back together.
Yeah, I agree. It'll be a lot of fun. We will do that. We will pick out a game, and we will definitely do that. All right, folks. Thanks once again for listening to this podcast and for watching these videos and for telling your friends. I know that you're doing it. Really, really appreciative of all the comments that some of you've chosen to leave and rating on iTunes, and that will help other Hawkeye fans find this podcast. So if it's something that you've enjoyed listening to and are enjoying, and you feel like helping us out, go to iTunes and leave a rating and a review, and tell all your Hawkeye friends that Miller and Morehouse are back on the air and blogging at HawkeyePodcast.com. Until the next time, take care.